I feel a moral obligation. Astrology directs me. Astrology shows me what could lie ahead if we sit here and don't do anything.
Astrology is really like a soul matrix here. I think the whole solar system is like a standing wave frequency that we're currently on in this consciousness. I mean, there's ancient Lemurian text and Atlantean text that said, the moon used to shine all the time. In 2008, we began a series of 5 aspects that are all in a family. They're called the Saturn-Uranus aspects. And there's actually 5 hits, if you will say, or 5 parts to this cycle. The first one is when the stock market crashed in 2008. It was within like 2 or 3 days of accuracy. The second one is when Obama administration had to borrow all the money that it did. The third one was just this last September, which kind of went by silently, but I think that's because the Fed was pulling this stuff so that it wouldn't have too much of an impact and doing a lot of movement of money and market stimulations. The fourth one comes up this April 27th. And the fifth and final is this summer. It happens in July 27th, but there is a series of aspects that go on this fifth one that is like a crescendo.
This is a high-level tectonic period in which earthquakes and volcanoes tend to appear on the scene. There's a tremendously difficult eclipse that's going to take place on June 26th, conjunct Pluto this year. Saturn will retrograde back into Virgo and oppose both Jupiter and Uranus at critical degrees between April and June, and then Uranus and Jupiter briefly go into Aries squared to Pluto. All of that adds up to more absolute crises. And the last time one of the prominent eclipses conjunct Pluto was in April of 1986 when we had the Chernobyl meltdown in Russia.
From June forward into the fall equinox, I think it's going to hit the fan. If we look through history, I mean, the pattern has always been prosperity, recession, depression, and war. Now, hopefully, we won't have to go that route. But it's been kind of the way the war machine, which really runs the the corporate world, seems to operate. I think some of the evil that's on this planet, which clearly exists, and it's attached to some of the people trying to manipulate many of us other souls, if you want to put it that way, is going to be directly tied into how severe these earth changes. For instance, if we buy into the manipulators, so to speak, trying to waltz us into another World War III, if people rally behind that kind of consciousness and stay really fearful of their material possessions to the point where that's all they're concentrated on, we could find it may be really dicey. If consciousness is really going to change, I think this earth is going to have to do some movement, and it may possibly be axis related. I think this summer we're going to see some stuff happen that's going to be pretty intense. One thing's for sure, Yellowstone is really looking bad. It certainly looks as though that one could cut loose here in the next year or so. The reason why, there's a 30-year Mars-Saturn conjunction, which is also a very volatile aspect. That's usually smacks of war. We could see some Earth changes also. I really think Earth changes are directly tied to mass consciousness. I think the astrology shows we're in serious trouble.
You don't see an asteroid hitting any place, do you?
That could happen near the end of the next decade. Right around 220, there's a huge bunch of shifts going to come through between now and 2019 and 2020. It's shown by the great conjunctions. And I really think, again, what's going to cause it to be severe or more mitigated is directly to the way the collective consciousness is on the planet. We are moving into a new era in the next probably 10 to 15 years. Once we get through this, I would say for sure 9 or 10, I think we are going to find a lot of free energy and cures for a lot of things.
I do believe that it's in these times when the greatest breakthroughs are often made, whether it's great inventions or great new concepts of what reality is, or spiritual experiences that you may have from opening like a flower from within yourself.
If we have a kind of a benevolent change where it's not abrupt with 300-mile-an-hour winds and so many other things we've heard by, past predictors, and it goes smoothly, we could transition into a new era smoothly. It's going to be up to our collective consciousness. The reason us astrologers and psychics can't call exactly what's going to happen is just because of that. It's divinely orchestrated. I really believe that the archangels and angelic forces, right down to the nature spirits, you've got the earth spirits, which are also known as gnomes, you've got the undines, which are water spirits, you've got the fire spirits, and you've got the air spirits. In hard sciences, they just wouldn't buy that. Quantum physics and string theory is all coming to the conclusion, hey, there's something really intelligent operating on this planet. If we make observations, it changes. The mystics have known forever that this planet is a spiritual place for souls to come. It's much more divine than just calling it directly through astrology. Astrology will show the points at which it's going to hit, but how severe or how saved we will be is going to be directly proportional to how we act. Both in the Vedantic scriptures, which are called Shastras, and also in the Kabbalah, the planets are not just spheres of rock orbiting around us. They're really referred to as multidimensional representations of angelic hierarchies, which are part of a divine system created for us souls who incarnate and experience life in physical form. Like in the Kabbalah, there's archangels, there's angels, there's spirits and intelligences to every planet. A lot of the secret societies knew and do know this stuff, and sometimes they may abuse it. But I really think this planet is exceedingly divine, and it's a living, vibrating thing.
We're going to have a new human race that I'm fond of calling it. In the past, we had Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. This time, humankind faces extinction, or what I call intentional or conscious evolution of consciousness, which is going to change our entire viewpoint of what reality is. And I have a deep feeling that by the 2020s, the magic year is 2026, between somewhere with all the struggles I think that we're going to go through, that humanity will go through, that we have the capacity on two levels, one to invent our way out of the crises, and the other is a consciousness change that recognizes, as we astrologers have known all along, that we are an intrinsic part of the universe, that we're more wave than particle. We have to see ourselves multidimensionally, that insights, ways of being are going to open up for us. People say to me, well, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, suppose you were back in the caveman era and you were the first person to be born in that tribe that could see color, and all the rest of the people around you saw in black and white. How would you describe that to your fellow tribesmen? I think that we're going to be making evolutionary leaps into seeing color, in a sense, into seeing life completely differently, and when we do, we're going to feel the connection that we have with one another and the connection that we have to the earth and the universe itself. You are ready for this, that there is a readiness that you have reached in your life. Once you remove fear as a primary blockade in your life and you open up, the ability that you have as a human being is going to expand into realms you probably never dreamed. You may be able to foresee a probable future. You may be able to foresee unbelievable answers to questions.